Welcome to another Founder Wisdom Pod. We have Thomas Watkins with us today, aka Tom Watkins, Tom Watt. He ensures that products achieve PLG through UX. He's the founder at Tree Leaf, and I think he has this podcast, also lecturer, cool guy altogether. And the first question I'm going to ask you, Tom, is what do you think
Yes.
about StreamYard's UX?
StreamYard's UX. I haven't checked it out. Should we check it out? Maybe
Well,
we
we
should
just
do.
did it together now. Was it painful?
That's this thing. I was thinking Streamline. Yeah. Oh, yeah. It was a little bit painful. For instance, I was on here with Charles and I pressed sign in and everything crashed. It's probably not how you want to do it. Here's one more thing. I don't want to bore the audience, but when someone doesn't have an account and you have sign in and sign up options, if they say sign in, just let them set up an account. The user shouldn't have to distinguish between if they're technically signing in or technically setting up an account, especially if you're signing in with some other service like LinkedIn or some social media platform. Just let people sign in and let it be smooth. But you want the technology to disappear in the background so people can do their work. That's how you create
Fully
great
agree.
things.
Yeah, I'll just give feedback to the StreamYard team because they do listen to some of my product feedback, and believe
Okay,
it or
good.
not, it was worse before. And I'll plug you in. I'll be like, Tom
Yeah,
told me X Y
you
Z.
guys are good. If you guys are listening, just contact me, Thomas Watkins, and I'll be glad to chat.
So how did you get into UX, Tom?
So I came out of it's Thomas. My dad went by Tom. I can't ever go by Tom, but Thomas. I came out of psychology, and essentially what we do is in UX, the core skill is you're applying psychology to the designing of things.
Right. And why choose that specifically? Because you could have stayed in the
Yeah.
classic branch of psychology, become a psychotherapist. Why put this into products? Because I believe products have the most potentials to change lives at scale. VS, if
Yeah,
you would stay in the
that's
classic
what
branch.
that's what it ultimately. I mean, it's in academia things move very slowly. So if you kind of work in the world of product design and creating things, you get to see the things that you've created quicker.
Correct. And you started your agency in 2016, or your
Yes.
consultancy sort of moved away from the academia world, because I believe you're
Well,
still a lecturer at Rice.
yeah, that's correct. But I've been doing UX for maybe about 17 years or so.
Wow.
So my agency, yes, I founded that around 2016. But before that, I've been working for all kinds of companies, creating products, worked for agencies. But what really happened with me is I started working with a startup back in 2014, and I fell in love with working for startups because you get to go 0 to 1. Some personalities fit with startups, others don't, but mine does. The act of trying to figure out what is it that we're going to create, helping it all to come together with a small dedicated team, and taking something to market is something I find exciting.
But wouldn't that make you repellent from academia? I find that I cannot work with academia on my side. I really have a startup personality as well. I move incredibly fast. I'm incredibly intense, and yeah, academia would kill my soul. How can you manage both?
Yeah, I had to unlearn a lot of things from academia world. So I still love academia. And the way I get my academia fix is I do conference talks. And for me, that fills that fix. But, there are some things you've got to unlearn coming out of academia. Like, one is the speed that things happen. But two is academics, I'm saying we, because I'm kind of relating to that, have a different relationship with data. And I think a lot of times in the business world, people have a very cynical relationship with data. Not always and in all cases, but it's very common in a corporate business meeting to see people just kind of using data to prove their points versus really trying to find out what is. And, there's just certain things kind of like that you have to sort of catch up. Here's another thing that's different about the academic world versus especially the startup world of entrepreneurship is that a lot of the things that you learn for some reason don't really apply to success in the real world. Like if you take someone out of business school and you say, okay, be in charge of a startup. That's probably not the person you want in charge of the startup. You want the person who has sort of the street smarts of having just been out there in the world doing stuff. It's not that something's bad about academics, but it just applies differently. Sometimes, it's you're just not going to get the right answer
Yeah, this
from the
the
books.
MBA type in a startup,
Yes,
that would be catastrophic. I
that's
can
right.
tell you that. I've seen it various times.
I've seen
Yeah,
it too. Yeah.
academia is great. I still love academia, like not the bureaucratic side, but yes, the truth side of things, the scientific side of things. I still remember, it's odd because I have a minor in political science and they were teaching us statistics in political science. And even to this day, I'm using stats and numbers and all of that. And yeah, I think in business, it's sort of easy to get caught up in our own assumptions, right? Especially with ChatGPT nowadays, that tells you all the time you're right. Yeah,
That's right.
fantastic, Charles. Keep on going in that wrong direction, right?
That's right.
What has been your relationship with AI, and what do you have to tell us about the UX of ChatGPT?
Yeah. So the UX of ChatGPT is what makes ChatGPT. I think when we think about the miracle of LLMs, we often think about it as the miracle of ML, right? The miracle of statistics and all of this back end technology. But really, the thing that made it, those things have been around. What made ChatGPT take off and all the LLMs is that it's closed the gap between humans and machines in terms of what humans have to do. Normally, when we want to talk to a machine, we have to learn coding. We have to learn to talk and think like a machine. So you write your code and then you spend some time debugging and figuring out what you said wrong until you get it right. What's wonderful about ChatGPT is it has the excellent UX, not just the screen looking nice or anything having to do with that, but the way you're able to communicate it with it. It's the user experience of being able to just talk how you want to say it. You can misspell things, have grammar errors and incomplete sentences, and somehow it knows what you mean. And the interesting thing is that the creation of ChatGPT, and I know this because I asked ChatGPT one time. I asked, "How did you get created? What was the team like, and the job roles that it took to create you?" And it was a lot of different job roles, and a lot of them were linguists and UX people because they needed to make it all come together as a full, complete, seamless experience.
And isn't it the psychophanty, I believe, psychophancy of
Yes, yes.
ChatGPT? Isn't that part of the UX? Like,
Yeah.
isn't it like what we want as humans, not just to feel understood when our ideas are kind of foggy, but also always being agreed with. I think ChatGPT is always like, "Hey, yes, that's exactly right." Well, it's not. If you really want growth as a founder, so do you think that this injection in the product is fundamental? Because, for example, I've been using Claude by Anthropic, and Claude is a bit more argumentative. And sometimes it's like, Claude, shut the fuck up, just do what I tell you, right? While ChatGPT is always like, yes, Charles, let's do this.
I envision that probably the sycophancy of ChatGPT will be something we'll be able to fiddle with in the future. So research is now being done on AI as a therapist, AI and different roles in people's lives. There's the hit apps, mostly overseas, with people having relationships with AI, as in romantic relationships. And the amount of agreeing versus a little bit of pushback I think, is going to be a really interesting question, and probably something that startups and companies try to perfect over the years to get the right amount.
Right, because I mean, I can appreciate flaws and sometimes why it's argumentative. For example, I do cold email, right? I have a cold email agency, and I spent a lot of time arguing with Claude about the ethics of cold email, right? And it finally understood that my point about cold email, and it started writing good cold emails for me. Um, they are investing a lot in ethics, right? And that's cool. But I felt that oddly enough, their ethics were wrong in many places, and I felt sometimes that Claude was actually lecturing me, and that felt very odd, and that's one reason why I turned.
Very interesting. Okay, so you're saying that it was too far in the other direction and you just didn't like it. It
Yeah,
ruined
it
the
was like
experience.
lecturing me, even not just cold email, right? Like a bunch of things. Like, Charles, you should think of doing that instead of doing this. But no, dude, you're wrong. Like, I'm smart, you know. I've thought about these things, and but yeah, Claude was way better at chat than other things. But just because it was causing friction, and my goal as a CEO, I want things to disagree with me, but I value productivity even more, right? So ChatGPT got me hooked.
Yeah, it is really good for that. And I think also what exactly you're using it for. So if you're using it for research and maybe you say an assertion, you say, hey, maybe there's, tell me about the 5 stages of product market fit, or something like that. Well, I want it to correct me and say, well, actually, no, there's this many stages of product market fit according to this thing and that, that thing. It does do that a lot, though. I think folks have noticed with ChatGPT where it plays both sides. If it's especially on a controversial issue, it'll like not take a stance and it'll say, well, some people say this and some people say that.
Oh, and
So
that's great. By the way,
yeah,
it would be pretty worrying if it would take one
if
side
it
or
picked
the
a
other,
side.
right? Like, especially if you're smart, like you would be very worried if ChatGPT was like, yeah, this is completely right. It
Correct.
would be worrying because they're also pretty close to AGI, in my opinion. But we'll keep that one for another day. Keeping to ourselves to UX, right? Another reason why I was hooked with ChatGPT is their desktop app, you know, and even their mobile app is quite good. VS Claude's app was like super buggy. And coming back to UX, I think it's giving the user the quickest hit of dopamine or serotonin in the fewest step, right? So how have you been designing customer apps, and yeah, how do you perceive UX, and why is it so game changing in the startup world?
It's so game changing because you need an edge that is going to involve people getting attached to your tool, people finding them. And so, one of the ways of doing this is not just about making your product beautiful. It's about when people go into your product, the product and the technology part disappears and people are able to just do their work and the technology gets out of the way. We all want to build something that people fall in love with, but falling in love with something has to do with it getting out of the way. And so if you want a differentiator and you're a startup and you've got competitors, maybe 4, 5, 6, 10, 20 competitors out there doing the same thing, you need to think about how can I deliver people value and, with out, and get everything out of the way so I can truly reward people. So when people get hooked on a social media app and they log in so they can see the number of likes that they received, and this makes them feel good, and then they go and they engage more with the product. Or if you use a productivity tool that allows you to, without thinking, you're just taking notes and you're not thinking about the technology, the keyboard shortcuts, everything it allows you to do, it just lets you dive in and do it. That's how folks need to be thinking about
Right.
things.
And I guess it starts with understanding your ICP, filtering your ICP before they actually become customers, niching down in one specific things, right? Because a lot of startups, they have multiple features. So you need to understand what does that specific user wants and give it to them as quick as possible. But I guess it's so hard, right? There's so many startups that fell on that level. Even if they film the actual users using their app, they just don't really understand. There's an empathy side of things as well, because, for example, I'm very tech savvy and you set up StreamYard in 3 minutes today, but some people it takes them 10 friggin' minutes, right?
Mhm.
And I need to really put myself in their shoes and be like, hey, here's how you should go with it. It's about guiding them through the process as well. I don't believe that much in onboarding SaaS as per se that points everywhere. Oh, you should do this, you should do that. Instead of like onboarding step, I think it should be so obvious, right? Like where they should click and where they should go. You need to think of the environment they're in, the device, right? It's a very complicated thing, and it's certainly probably the most important function in our modern times. Other than like being full AI stack nowadays. But yeah, like what kind of clients do you work with usually? Is it SaaS? Is it in Austin
SaaS.
specifically? Okay.
Mostly SaaS, folks building productivity tools, a little bit of direct to consumer, but it's mostly stuff that you've got to get stuff done with. So apps and web apps mostly.
And as a consultant, they just pay you hourly, or is it a monthly package?
So I work. We operate on a fractional team. So with us, you get a whole UX team, but we're on fractional hours. So you might get 5 or 10 hours of me per week, a certain amount of a graphic designer, a certain amount of a researcher, if that is in the project, and you get sort of a custom-made team who's working on making you successful. And we've got a lot of experience with startups, so we really know what we're doing with it.
As a consultant, how do you facilitate your own UX, your product experience? And I'm a consultant too. I have an agency as well. How can we facilitate our buying experience and receiving the value experience?
I mean, I think, yeah, you always want to take your own methods and sort of practice what you teach and turn things inward. So all of our methods and tools internally, we try to make things to where, things are just smooth and seamless. So, it's about practicing it as, kind of every part of your professional life.
Right. So reducing the steps. I run a cold email agency, so make it very simple for them. I send them a GTM plan before they get on a call with me, just to reduce the friction, because there's a huge friction in meeting with a stranger that you don't know if they'll hard sell you, which is a very outdated practice, but some still do it. So I guess people are scared. So I just deliver value upfront, right? And then I'm like, hey, here's a Calendly link. It's up to you to see if we're a good fit or not. And then there's an onboarding call after that if they're up for it. It's very short and sweet. It's not complicated. It's also recent, right? I try to not book too late in the future. I like to take the momentum and the energy and get them somewhere. I feel I'm sort of lacking UX on the follow-up side. Like once I serve them, maybe like send them a survey or something, follow up with them, and maybe upsell them to a better package. Should I map like this full
it's constantly
journey,
evolving. So UX constantly evolves. So you start and you try to nail one thing. Like you mentioned the ICP. So there's the ideal customer, that persona, but then there's the ideal task that they're trying to do. And what all product creators need to think about out there is, what is the one thing that needs to be so stupidly easy in my product that people can just go in there and do that, and then work out from there. But you want to at least nail one thing and do it better than everybody, and then kind of work out feature wise from there.
Right. Yeah. In my space, cold email, I mean, it's a very tight niche, and I'm probably top 5 or top 10 in my niche, is like AI SaaS, for example. So pretty well equipped on that level. I have a podcast question for you as well. Like, what's the UX of your own podcast? Like how, and what do you think about my UX? Like, except other than like StreamYard, was it an easy process for you? Did you
It's
enjoy
pretty
the
good.
experience?
It's pretty good. You have an automated email that sends before, I think, a day or so before, sending reminders. That's always a good practice. I do the same thing with my podcast, Product Led Growth Leaders, to try to make sure that you get the smallest amount of drop off. I really love how you're taking a broad definition of UX. Normally people only think about UX in terms of screens.
UX is everything.
But
my wife has a UX. My dogs have a UX. Everyone.
So yeah.
And your podcast, what's
product-led growth
like
leaders.
optimize? Yeah, but how do you optimize the pre-experience? You just talked about it, but how do you make your podcast like the best podcast ever for a guest?
So I probably don't. I mean, it's reasonably good, and I've got a team who's good at automating a lot of the stuff. But we do some things. So I have pre-recorded videos where I try to onboard the guest who, people like me and you are used to being in front of a camera, in front of a microphone, but a lot of people aren't. So I have like pre-recorded videos where I'm explaining things to them, and hey, make sure you're in a room with decent lighting, and you want the microphone to be a certain distance from your face and things like that. And then by the time they meet me, they've seen me a bunch of times on those videos, and they also feel a little bit more comfortable with the podcast setting.
Interesting. So I do a bunch of things wrong with this podcast, but one thing that I think I'm doing well is making people comfortable. You know, like most of the people that come in first time on this podcast, I mean, I might be intimidating because I like 3x Iron Man and created all these companies, but I do think that I can slow things down and make things very simple for them so that when they show up, even if it's their first experience, they have a good time. And I think that sometimes if I would over send them info, by the way, I think I'm reaching that level with the amount of emails I'm sending. I can generate cortisol in them, and when they show up, their performance is crap. And what do you think
Stressful.
the live aspect of my podcast? Do you think that's a better UX?
The live aspect, I think this is. I mean, I don't know if it's a good feature. I'm not sure on the
Because it's
UX.
instantly published,
It's instantly
and
published.
it's
You
like,
have
hey,
more
you can't
reach.
fumble, we can't do that the second time. You know, this is live. It also
Yeah,
brings
I mean,
cortisol.
I imagine, because this is my first time doing a live podcast interview. Did you get more engagement? Can we see our engagement right now? Is
You
there a
can't,
way?
but it's pretty low. I don't even want to
Oh,
tell you.
oh, okay. So I won't look at it. I won't look at it. Can
Two people. I think there's two persons. Normally, because the guests have the options to plug in their audience. Ultimately, this is how my podcast grows, right? It's like
Gotcha.
you stream to CEOs and founders, and they're like, oh, that's pretty
Right.
cool. I'm gonna follow Charles.
Right.
Normally, if shit pops off, it's like 50 to 100 people.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
but I do like 7 to 10 a day. So hopefully that's my snowball growth
Exactly.
mechanism. But
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah, it's still at the beginning of that journey, right? Like still trying to improve. And I also will send you like a feedback email that's automated after that one, which I think is
Awesome.
pretty cool.
Awesome.
Thomas, where can we find out more about you?
Yeah, go to 3leaf.consulting. The number 3leaf.consulting. Check out my podcast, Product Led Growth Leaders, which is conversations with people who are trying to create great things, founders and folks who work for companies who they try to drive products toward greatness. And my upcoming podcast to be dropping in a month, a new podcast show called The Design Psychologist. So check
Love
out
it.
all of those things. Yes.